This episode, I'm going to talk about relationships because today is my 1 year anniversary with Miss Sammy. 1 year with my girlfriend. There's a lot I want to talk about. Last night, well, actually yesterday and this morning, I was scrambling, not because I'm a procrastinator, but because it was just the divine timing of getting this certain thing done. But I was working on this little storybook that I made for her. So if you're just listening, I apologize. But if you're watching, I got a ton of little photos of us and made this little paper book thing as kind of a photo, and then each one had a flip up thing and it tells a little story about the moment. But this one's actually great because this was the first photo. You can see me, if you look close enough, holding crutches, and she's there next to me because I went on my morning quote unquote run when I demolished my foot. And that was our first time doing the old morning mile together. And so she went real slow and hung in there with me as I crutched along. So that was really cool. But Sammy and I met, well, a little bit over a year ago. We went to a running event. It was actually the shakeout run, so kind of the day before, a couple days before, warm-up run for the Austin Half Marathon and Marathon. So a couple weeks ago when I did it, we actually went to the same one as kind of a fun little revisit of the first time that we met. But I remember I had seen her around a bunch at the gym and just different little events here and there. I said, oh, she's real cute now. I'm going to have to do something about this. And so I eventually saw her at this event, and just happened to be in line in the run behind her. It's just totally chance. Definitely did not try to do that whatsoever, but eventually got to chatting, and the rest is history. I won't go into the whole story because, I got to keep some things up to the suspense. But look, I really want to talk about some of the authentic lessons that I've learned over this past year. Obviously, talk about some great things, talk about some things that we've struggled with because relationships are pretty freaking difficult. I feel like that saying is a cliche at this point because everybody knows that it's pretty tough to get along with another person, no matter how similar or different or perfect for each other you are. So much that I've learned, am currently working on, currently excited about. So I'm going to go through it. What I want to start with is kind of what holds things together. And this seems to be the cheaper one, lifestyle, right? Kind of overlooked. I personally used to overlook this. I'd say, if my hypothetical girlfriend doesn't go to the gym or doesn't eat the same way or similar, or doesn't really have that same understanding, it's not that big of a deal because that's not really what it's about. Now, that's definitely true. That's not what it's about. But you think about a relationship. What the hell is the point of a relationship? Well, hopefully to stay together forever and build a family and continue. So when there's this home and family unit being built on a certain foundation, you would hope that there's a certain agreement of how to live built into that foundation. So I think the lifestyle thing is actually ridiculously important. Sammy and I both lift every day. She runs plenty of days. It doesn't have to be the freaking run streaker necessarily. We eat the same way. She's all about eating whole foods, and she cooks freaking homemade sourdough. It's kind of the best thing ever. So there's an alignment there that makes absolute sense. And again, this is seen as the cheaper thing because when you talk about a relationship, it's this fairy tale love story kind of thing. And that's also not always the case. I feel like anybody that talks about their relationship on social media, it's either something absolutely horrible happened and some dramatic bullshit, or it's just a pure fairy tale. Nothing could possibly be wrong. And that's super not realistic either. But again, we come back to these fundamentals of just the way that you live, the way that you eat and exercise. Those things matter a ton. So I have found a lot of value in being with somebody that is very similar in those ways. Now, when it comes to more of the dedication aspect, a commitment. I mean, if that's not part of your relationships, then, that's not really a relationship. There has to be commitment built into that to tough it out through the difficult times, enjoy the great times, and be together for a long time. So commitment is not just an obligation. It's a reflection of who you are. So I think when you face difficult times in a relationship, it's very easy to question, oh, well, is this even the right person? Should I just go find someone else? So what you're not making a commitment to is just the idea of a relationship. You're committing to a human being. That cuts pretty deep for me. Because, you get used to somebody and you live real close and hang out all the time, and, it becomes normal. And then you can get into, arguments or just disagreements about little things, and you try to overcome it, and it can feel inflated because you're going, how do we overcome this thing? And life, in a sense, life just becoming very normal and typical cheapens this idea I'm talking about, where that's a whole human. And just something personal to me, whenever I look at Sammy's hands, it kind of puts me in this state of whoa. It zooms me out completely. I go, oh my God. You look at the little lines on her fingers and her fingerprints, and I'm just going, man, this is a whole human with a whole story, with just there's so much to that, and it overwhelms me to even talk about that. But I think that's something that really pulls me out of just the disagreement mindset, again, through these hard times. And so commitment is super important, again, to be the foundation of a relationship, but it's also a reflection of who you are. Because you question, oh, should I even continue this? If that's your mindset in a relationship, then you're not really a committed person, if that makes sense. Now, not every relationship is meant to be, don't get me wrong. But you have to understand that the way you do one thing is the way you do most things. For me, I am extremely committed to the things that I commit to. In this relationship, I have committed to my girlfriend. And that not being committed essentially does not make sense. So there's a loyalty aspect to that. Again, it's a reflection of who you are as a person. Two whole people are or is, what's the grammar there? I don't know. What makes up a relationship? Two whole individuals make up a productive and healthy relationship. Not two people that are working from scarcity and they're trying to just use the other person to comfort them or be some sort of, I don't even know, fallback, safety zone. There has to be a recognition of who am I? Do I know myself? Do I love myself? Do I respect myself before getting into a relationship? And then, of course, that grows through being in a relationship, but you can't count on another person to save you from yourself. It just can't start out that way. So for me, a relationship has always been the most important thing to me and the most exciting thing to me. And so when I wasn't in one for a super freaking long time, I was spending that time building the respect for myself, building the love for myself, wanting a relationship, feeling very well equipped, by the way, but not seeing other people that match that same level of wholeness. Because when you feel whole and you're working from abundance and the other person is working from scarcity, it absolutely never ever works out. I promise you that. It always becomes an imbalance. Not just differences, not opposites attract, but an imbalance of commitment, an imbalance of, honestly, the skill in navigating a relationship, because it takes a lot of skill, it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of awareness. So two whole individuals, that is what's necessary. And people do not want to wait. Nobody wants to wait. Nobody wants to build all of that value within themselves and then have a relationship, because you look around and everyone's in a relationship. Everyone is happy. You only know what other people are willing to tell you. So when you're looking around and comparing yourself to everybody else, you got to be truthful in that comparison, because otherwise you're going to trick yourself into thinking that you need to just get into one. Come on. I need to rush this process. I'm falling behind. There's no falling behind. The only thing that makes a timeline damning is your perception of the timeline. So just don't have a damning perception. Now, I want to talk about some hardships that I've personally faced in my relationship with Sammy, or we've both faced in our relationship, because I think it's really helpful to talk about these things that I don't see many people really discussing. Now, when you're getting to know somebody, you might find that they get to know you and let you know them in a very different way than you do it. And I have found that like crazy, because here's the thing. I surround myself with people that I feel very comfortable with and cared for by. So if something great happens to me, I'm walking in the door and I'm talking about that shit immediately. I'm going, this was awesome. Check it out. I'm telling the story. If something bad happens, well, for what it's worth, I'm opening the door. I'm saying, you're not going to believe this shit. Here's what I'm frustrated about. Here's what I'm working with. I wear my experiences and my thoughts on my sleeve. Sammy does not operate the same way. And it's taken us a lot of time to recognize that there's a fundamental difference in the way that we do this. I am not the interviewer, because I imagine that if somebody feels comfortable with me, they're going to be open and as sharing about their life as I am to them. And it's not always the case. Because I'm so forward about who I am, how I am, what I'm thinking about, etc., she just gets to hear it. She knows. However, she does not bring things up in the same way. And so I've learned my responsibility as of very recent working through this to ask more of the questions, to be more inquisitive in that way. Honestly, that's something that I'm trying to do more of in general, because I think, in most healthy dynamics, people like to be questioned. Not interrogated, but questioned. Hey, what did you think of this? How did this work? What happened here? Because it's just, hey, can you share who you are, how you are, what you're thinking with me? If done properly, that's received really well. So I'm trying to be more that way. But yeah, it's been a big shift mentally to realize that not everybody is just going to say what's going on. And I don't think that it means that's a bad thing. I think there is the element of building more and more comfort and understanding within the relationship so that does open up. Because again, I think a lot of the deeper things that you would really get to know someone by might not be the result of just a straightforward question. Hey, what do you think about X? Sometimes you operate on just an idea and it comes naturally. So that's how I tend to get to know people a lot more. But again, I think I can open up more space by asking more of those questions. Now, something more fun, kind of, that I've learned is the line for humor and joking and banter and picking on each other. So here's the deal. Miss Samantha is a little bit harsh. No, I'm kidding. She's a little bit straightforward with her jokes. So she likes to be kind of sharp and pick on people and do that whole thing. Now here's another fun fact. Samantha's a lady. And ladies don't like to get the same thing back in a lot of cases. And, when I receive a joke, I'm going, all right, game on, throw down the gloves. And I've realized that it's just not the same thing. I talked to my roommate Mario, and he has kind of this future wish of his significant other also being his best friend. And I point out sometimes, I say, well, I don't know, because women don't respond to jokes the same way that we do in our relationships, for example, as friends. It just is not the exact same thing. So I don't know if you want a pure mirror image of your friends in female form. There might be some nuances there. So when I'm joking around with Sammy, I can see that line get crossed, and I'll see the smile and the laughter go right down, and the facial expressions change, and I can see it in an instant. And I go, whoa, 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 whoa. And I try to rescue the mission in that sense because I see that it kind of dipped below that line. And, when she makes a joke to me, I'm going, oh, she's just saying something. Of course, she wouldn't mean it. There's a certain line where she takes it seriously, and that line comes sooner than my line does, if that makes sense. So, this really goes into kind of the male and female dynamic. I don't want her to be the same as me whatsoever. So that means that I have to learn how to navigate a new kind of person. And it's tough, and there are the little fun moments where it's kind of I didn't mean that, and we're just playing around, and let me kind of fix this. Other times, the misunderstanding is a little bit more deeply rooted, and it takes a lot of work to kind of get through. So learning just those attributes, again, these aren't bad. I think when something leads to kind of a disagreement or a misunderstanding, it's immediately labeled as bad, but there is also an element of just calibration. Now, this is something I really try to be fast with, this element of calibration, because if something goes bad, I go, okay, let me take note. And then if it goes bad again, I'm going, oh no, wait, it went bad again. But I'm trying to be more aware of what's going on here. All right, let me test it out and make sure that this doesn't happen again. Happens again. And I'm going, oh my God, I'm not calibrating quickly enough, because the understanding and kind of the wiggle room here is going to run out pretty soon, and then it's just going to turn into a real problem. So trying to be diligent about taking the data, making changes, kind of swallowing your pride in a sense, not really, but just being agile, emotionally agile. I think this is super important. And I can be a stubborn person. A lot of my structure and insane willpower can also lead into kind of here's what happened, here's what you think happened, here's what I think happened, and it just keeps going in a circle. Sometimes it's not about the facts of what happened, though. Sometimes it's about, again, the emotional agility, the emotional care. These are things that just take a really long time to learn, and I'm still absolutely doing them. And I think one thing I'm trying to implement a little bit more practically speaking is alone time, because I live with 3 of my other friends. Sammy lives in the house behind us. So I live in the A house, she lives in the B house. She lives there with her friend. So there's 5 of us, and then there's kind of a group that always comes over. So there's a ton of us that hang out all the time. So making sure to plan specific alone time with just her is very important. And this sounds very, very simple. But I'm kind of I don't need to go do something with somebody to have a good time. I think she responds a little bit better to actually going and doing something. So for me, again, taking that responsibility, taking ownership instead of just complaining about it and going, all right, let me work on understanding this. Because sometimes to go do another thing on top of both of us being super busy, for example, I'm going, geez, another activity. But it's one of those, you have to spend energy you don't have to restore the energy that you're looking for. Right? So you have to spend that energy to restore more connection, more energy within that relationship, so it kind of feeds itself as you move forward. So that is another one for me where I'm saying, all right, every week I want at least a little go do. Right? We had a funny kind of disagreement last week. I said, we should go to the Capitol, because I haven't seen the Capitol building in Austin yet. And yeah, this is an obvious, let's just go do a thing. And she said, I don't really want to. And she said, but if you want to, we can. Yeah, I'm down to go. I'm going, wait, no, I thought this was an us thing. I'm just going for the sake of us. If I wanted to just go see it, I guess I could just go see it by myself. But, and it's learning to understand in those little cases. It's freaking really hard. It's nuanced. That for me right there, though, is a data point. Did I make it super clear that we should go do this thing that's probably kind of boring, but we're doing it for the sake of us, and just to have something that's kind of there but not super overstimulating, so we're not even focused on each other? Did I make that clear enough? Probably not. But yeah, next time. right? Taking on those points of data, calibrating. Now I have to be quick to calibrate, because if I did the same thing 5 more times, 5 weeks in a row, it's not going to look good. So this is that skill. This is the energy expenditure that restores more energy and allows you to build instead of kind of dig yourself into a hole. So generally speaking, there are a lot of things that I observe people doing in relationships or around relationships that I want to talk about. Thankfully, these are not the case for me right now. But again, I see this more so on a cultural level. It's very common trends in how people approach this. So the half in, half out thing, the lack of commitment. This feels safe. Feels very safe because it's a defense mechanism. I'm going to kind of give some of myself, but if something goes wrong, I want to be able to escape fully unscathed at any moment. That right there ruins the relationship potential. Because if you're trying to build a relationship on half of yourself, don't you think that's probably not going to work, considering that a healthy relationship is based on 2 whole individuals coming into partnership? So the half in, half out thing, again, defense mechanism, pretty skillful, honestly. It is emotionally protective, and there is a skill to that. However, if you're sitting there going, I want the best relationship and I really want to be able to grow with somebody and have a family one day and that kind of thing, well, then you can't have that mentality. Can't have that mentality beforehand, and you definitely can't have that mentality during. People just act like freaking idiots. They say, oh, well, once I find the right person, then I'm going to change. People sleeping around and just being ridiculously irresponsible in terms of relationships, and then they think that once they find the right person, they're just going to change that. No, you build tendencies. You build pathways in your brain that respond to other people a certain way. These things don't just go away overnight. So again, the whole hookup culture kind of thing, people being promiscuous. Yeah, try that out when that great person comes around. They're going to realize that you're an absolute dumbass, and you're not going to be in a relationship with them, because they have a pair of eyes and a pair of ears as well and can detect your irresponsibility. So that's absolutely not going to work. This bleeds into the same idea of hyper-independence. Hyper-independence. I don't need anybody. I'm going to just do my thing. It's just me. We're social creatures, okay? I'm not afraid to say that I need other people. Ooh, that's scary, because what if other people go away? Yeah, life is totally scary. Relationships are scary. Being vulnerable is scary, but it's true. Hyper-independence is a defense mechanism. I made this video on Instagram a while ago, and it was this girl talking about how to perfectly detach, or how to detach like a pro or something like that. So freaking ridiculous. And she's just talking about not letting anyone bother you, and you don't care if you're in that relationship with him or not, and this kind of thing. So I made a little reaction video to it. I can't even remember exactly what I said word for word, but it was something along the lines of, yeah, well, this is incredibly stupid, because this is the exact formula for a piss poor relationship that's based on leverage and playing games, instead of 2 whole individuals being vulnerable and emotionally agile and building something real. So the hyper-independence thing, absolutely crazy. Cannot get on board with that. Now, I talked about this earlier, but nothing sometimes is better than something. Because again, you look around, you see everybody in a freaking relationship, and you're going, hey, I need that. And that was me, absolutely. It is the most tempting thing possible. You look around seeing people love each other, and you're by your damn self eating dinner. You're going, shit, dude, what? What am I doing wrong? You know what I mean? Sometimes you have to spend that time by yourself to eventually find the person that you deserve and deserves you. That's a big part of it too. sometimes nothing in the moment is worlds better than something, because the nothing in the moment might lead to everything that you're looking for, whereas the something right now might be the biggest obstacle in the way of that. If you settle for somebody that doesn't understand you, if you settle for somebody that doesn't hold themselves to a similar high standard that you do, you're going to be disappointed, and that relationship is going to drain you more so than it is going to fulfill you. And so I think embracing the art of not having that thing while you wait for what you actually want is such a powerful skill. And the patience involved in that is incredible. The character building involved in that is incredible. But I think when you spend that time becoming as valuable as possible, as emotionally well-equipped as possible, as relationally skillful as possible, before you meet that right person, and then you do, and you have this whole foundation, man, the appreciation you will have and receive is crazy. So I would say for anybody in a relationship, having that emotional agility and learning from those data points, being very quick on your feet, I think that's an amazing thing to uphold. I think for anybody that is not in a relationship and you're by yourself, metaphorically, of course, there's people around you, but you know exactly what I mean. Embracing the time you have to build yourself into someone amazing. Take every bit of advantage of that. Be as healthy as possible. Be as smart as possible. Be as financially stable as possible. Especially as the man in a relationship, that's super important. I would say the masculine-feminine dynamic is such a funny puzzle to try and put together, because, you know, as a man, it's really hard to understand what it's like to be a woman. And I think vice versa, no matter how hard you try. I think, you know, the stability and structure and safety, you know, that comes from the masculine side is typically best well paired with the emotional fluency in a way, the emotional support. It's not about being able to arm wrestle each other and it's a tough match. I mean, yeah, Sammy's pretty jacked, but if we arm wrestle, that hand's going down in 1 second, okay? She came to jiu-jitsu the other day, a week or two ago. She came to a couple of classes to try it out. And I think she liked it. But I don't think she likes going with me as much, because for me, I'm going, I've done this for a year. I can finally go with somebody that doesn't know anything and see how easy it is. But for her, it's just freaking big, heavy me, crushing her face into the mat. So that's not too fun. But she went with some of our other friends who are girls, and she really liked it. So maybe that'll be good. But again, there's this whole dynamic that you have to figure out really for yourself. It doesn't matter these blanket statements that people will make, especially on social media, about the masculine, feminine kind of thing. You really do have to find that balance, and not that it's a 50-50 balance and everything. Sometimes it's super, super imbalanced in a balanced way. It's kind of the yin and yang sort of concept. I would say that the way that Sammy presents and the way that I present, sometimes I'm way more goofy and emotional, not in kind of I'm crying my eyes out all the time kind of way, but it's more of, I sing and goof around. It's a little bit more caricaturized, and she's a little bit more straight to the point. Shorter sentences. Let's get it over with, that kind of thing. Very logistical and quick. But that's just in the way that we communicate. There's a completely different way that we'll interact in other categories of our relationship. And so, again, you can't really just see some Instagram reel that says, you got to be this way, and she's got to be this way. And it just, the whole relationship thing is void of nuance on social media. And so my hope is that just listening to my open train of thought here is that you can pull away some realistic images of what relationships can look like, some things to maybe work on and think about. And then again, outside of the scope of a relationship, something to focus on for building yourself into somebody amazing. And that pursuit is something to be very proud of. You don't have to have a relationship just to hold it up like a trophy. You know what I mean? The person you become, the character you build within yourself, that's the thing of real value. So with that said, if anything I've spoken about during this episode is something you need more guidance with, know that I coach. So when it comes to building unbreakable discipline, confidence, which these things pour into relationships, friendships, any other sector of life, this is my specialty. I can help you build that unbreakable discipline so that your mind is an asset instead of an obstacle in the way of the person you want to become. And confidence, well, this is fundamentally the belief that you could even achieve the things that you do want to achieve. So again, if those are things you need more guidance with, you can book a discovery call at the top link in the description, and we'll chat. Now, if you want to subscribe to my newsletter where I write about the things that I talk about in the podcast, do that. Link is also in the description. I send out 2 a week. It's good for if you want to just see it in more, not paper form, but word form, I guess. Take some screenshots, save some quotes, that kind of thing. I love the newsletter. It's just a very good kind of, old school way of communicating with you guys. So aside from all the other content and whatnot, that is a cool thing you can subscribe to, totally free. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. Comment what you thought, because I absolutely love to hear from you. And give it a like. If you're listening on Spotify, give her a 5 stars. 5-star rating on the old show. I think that helps me out quite a bit, so that other people go, wait, some other folks think that this shit is awesome. I'm going to listen in too. So give it a 5-star and then comment what you thought as well. Absolutely love to hear your thoughts, questions, hatred, love, all of that good stuff. Let me know. Last but not least, 3 words or 4, depending on who you are. No phone dinner. Or no phone freaking dinner. When you're eating dinner tonight, or if you're eating dinner right now, we might have to defer the responsibility to tomorrow because you've already broken the rules here, but no phone, no laptop, no TV. Turn all that shit off, throw it out the window, get it out of there. Sit with yourself. Or if you're in a relationship, sit with your significant other. Or if you're with your family, sit with your family. Be there in the present moment. Cut the technology, at least for that window of appreciating your meal and the people around you. If there's no one around you, be there with you. That's a good person to eat with as well. So be a human. Embrace the presentness. With that, I hope you have the best day ever. I'm about to go do that too. Enjoying the rest of my 1-year anniversary with Miss Samantha. She's doing yoga right now, so that's the only reason I'm recording. Don't hate me. We're going to hang out. We're going to the farmer's market, doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's going to be a great day. But I love you. Catch you on the next one. Bye-bye. And it's all because your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. Evening rolls around and it's time to go to town. Where do you go? Home to rock and roll.